I hope we start to see in more and more products moving forward is AI will start to synthesize the trends from across all of these different platforms and say, oh, if over here Meta knows that you interact with a lot of, or your audience, I should say, interacts with a lot of pages that are really enthusiastic about 90s boy bands. And then over here, Google knows that your target persona has been shopping for this type of product or has high intent around these types of services. What are those insights for you? What does that mean
like
for
a
your
snapshot?
business? Yeah, exactly. What is that summarized view that's relevant to your business that says, hey, this is a problem space. This is an opportunity space that you are uniquely positioned to address.
If you're finding value in what you're watching, consider hitting the subscribe button and turning on the bell notification. Oh, and don't forget to drop a comment. I love hearing your thoughts and ideas. By the way, we have got a ton of other videos waiting for you. And if you are ready to level up your mindset, come hang out with us in our private Facebook group called Mindset for Business Success. Welcome to Super Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Shahid Durrani. Today we have with us Blake Reichenbach. Blake currently works as a product manager at HubSpot, focusing on the content AI platform, and is the owner of Howdy Curiosity, an online nonfiction bookstore and learning community. Welcome to our show, my friend Blake.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
My pleasure. I'm excited to talk about the area of your expertise and what you're working on day-to-day AI. And there's a lot of talk around AI. So I'm very much curious and excited to learn about how AI is reshaping SaaS products.
Oh my gosh, so many. First of all, if you would have told me just 5 or 6 years ago that I would be talking about machine learning and AI on a daily basis, I would not have believed you. Because at that point, the technologies that were available to average consumers were so nascent and so cost prohibitive that I would have thought for the average entrepreneur or the average small business, being able to leverage AI is still a decade, 2 decades off. But now we're at a place where almost any entrepreneur, regardless of budget or technical expertise, is going to have access to some degree of AI or machine learning that they can leverage. And I think we're at this really interesting place as a market where the really flashy AI tools that are getting a lot of attention, things like ChatGPT and the tools that are built on top of ChatGPT in the generative AI space, those are getting the lion's share of attention. Those are the tools where any entrepreneur, any creator can leverage them to create a lot of content really quickly. So things like blog posts or social posts, your marketing emails. There are even some, which frankly I don't recommend, that will automate your like LinkedIn engagement. And those have been really buzzy in the entrepreneurial space. But where I think things get incredibly interesting and incredibly powerful for entrepreneurs is this category of AI that seeks to automate manual repetitive actions and integrate data analysis. So data analysis, I think, is one of those things that AI is incredibly well suited for. That's incredibly difficult for humans to do, especially if you think about the solo entrepreneur persona, where you already have a million things to do. And then doing this data analysis, be it like website analytics or understanding your customer persona or researching someone before you do outreach, having an AI that can aggregate that data and give you a summary as you go is incredibly helpful, incredibly empowering, and it's incredibly attainable with the technology that's available to entrepreneurs today.
And that can improve the user experience on both ends as well. If someone is dealing with a business or a consumer dealing with a SaaS product.
Definitely.
And you don't feel like there might be a potential with business growth using machine learning? You mentioned about LinkedIn, like using engagement might be a little bit sensitive for some, that LinkedIn is being used in that way. But is there any other areas where business growth can take advantage?
So, to quickly clarify on the LinkedIn engagement and the AI tools
Uh-huh.
there,
Mm-hmm.
one thing to keep in mind is that AI is a tool, and
Mm-hmm.
tools are only effective if you use them well. If I had a screw in the wall that I needed to take out, if I started hitting my wall with a hammer, it's going to do more
Mm-hmm.
harm than good. The same thing with these really generic, canned, inauthentic reactions that these like engagement bots create on platforms like LinkedIn and similar ones for like other
Mm-hmm.
social platforms as well. They're ultimately going to do more harm than good. If every time someone in your target persona posts, you have this like automated response, it's like, great idea, great thought, rocket ship emoji. That's not adding
People are going to pick
anything to
up.
the conversation. Yeah, people are going to
Yeah.
see that and they're
Yeah.
going to be like, oh, cool, look, he has a
Mm.
bot.
Yeah.
Amazing. And it
Mm.
comes across as inauthentic. And I think
Mm.
that's one of the areas where when we think about business growth in AI, entrepreneurs need to be really thoughtful of just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean that you should, where you need to make sure that if you're leveraging AI, you're still creating significant value for your target audience and that you're still connecting with your audience in a really authentic way. AI cannot replace the human element of being there for your customer and for
Mm.
being a resource and an authority and someone that your customer can trust. So,
Mm.
when we think about business growth, AI absolutely can help you accelerate business growth. I mentioned earlier the process of automation and streamlining. And when you look at
Mm.
tools like, even if you look at Zapier's offerings, like Zapier's been around for a long time, where they've essentially had this platform that strings together API calls and webhooks. And it's done that really well for a long time. They've added so much within the last year, building on top of AI platforms that give users additional tools to essentially automate their workflows in new ways that are really, really exciting. I've actually been playing around with their new workspaces, and I can't
Mm.
remember all the terminology that they use for their tools, but they have some new exciting AI powered ways to go even deeper in how you automate tasks and essentially build out your internal tools that go deeper than just saying, if A, do B, right?
Yeah.
And when we think about the types of challenges that often inhibit business growth is often a multivariate equation. There's that aspect of acquiring new business and bringing in new revenue. But then there's this other side of the equation, which is there's something internal that is expensive, that's time consuming, that limits how much time you can dedicate to acquiring new customers or that drives up costs. And so that's an area where if you can start to apply AI to say, what if I cut out this step? What if an AI jumped from A to C and cut out B, right? Where you can start to simplify the left side of this equation and dedicate more side to the right side of the equation and bring
Mm.
up your business growth that way. So that's where I really see the most value there for driving growth.
Mm. Use it as a tool, like you mentioned, rather than becoming really excited about AI and say, "Yeah, it's going to do everything for me. I'm just going to sit back and just relax." That's something that may get someone in trouble if you want to rely completely on it. But if you use some portions of your business, some areas of your business, use it as a tool to complement something else that is human driven, that could be beneficial.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a product manager by trade.
Hmm.
And one of the
Hmm.
sort of textbook aphorisms of product management is to build solutions that are tied to existing problems, not to go searching for a problem because you've already built a solution. And
Mm.
that's how I think about
Mm.
AI, right? it can do so much. It has a ton of applications, especially in the business world. But I think if you're just trying to shove AI at everything, or
Everything.
saying like, oh, AI can do this really cool thing, but what you're ultimately solving for is a fringe case that maybe like 1% of 1% of your install base needs, which now I'm talking like as a product manager at a SaaS company, right? Then you're building an AI feature that will not be heavily leveraged. And that's not a space that's super desirable.
And you mentioned data. Data is a great area that AI can take over basically because it could read and gather that insights and provide reports, provide directions even. When it comes to predictive analytics, how does it empower specifically SaaS companies to deliver more of a personalized solutions to their customers?
Yeah, so I think within SaaS, one of the things that I'm excited about at the intersection of data and AI is in terms of the type of insight and recommendation engines that we can give our customers. When the average small business or entrepreneur sets up an analytics platform or a reporting platform, they often look at a lot of baseline or surface level metrics and have to make assumptions about that. And often we start to see entrepreneurs having multiple data sources. Maybe they have their Google tracking pixel, their LinkedIn tracking pixel, their Meta tracking pixel, their HubSpot tracking code. And each of these platforms all have these disconnected reporting sets that are all aggregating like slightly different, but thematically similar bits of data. And of course, each of those data sets is going to have different contexts, right? What Meta knows about you is going to be a bit different than what Google knows about you. It's going to be a bit different than what LinkedIn knows about you. It's going to be a bit different than what HubSpot knows about you. But what's really great about bringing AI into a SaaS platform where all of this data can be aggregated is instead of what I think the current approach, or what will eventually be the approach of yesteryear is, which would be essentially creating dashboards that just put all of these surface level reports in front of you. What AI will start to be able to do, and what I hope we start to see in more and more products moving forward, is AI will start to synthesize the trends from across all of these different platforms and say, oh, if over here, Meta knows that you interact with a lot of, or your audience, I should say, interacts with a lot of pages that are really enthusiastic about 90s boy bands. And then over here, Google knows that your target persona has been shopping for this type of product or has high intent around these types of services. What are those insights for you? What does that mean
like
for
a
your
snapshot?
business? Yeah, exactly. What is that summarized view that's relevant to your business that says, hey, this is a problem space. This is an opportunity space that you are uniquely positioned to address.
But that would be only possible if Meta and these other platforms allow that penetration, right?
Yeah, they would have to share their data, and that is always in question,
another
right?
topic.
Can we get that data? Maybe. But I think regardless of the degree to which they share that data, we have access to a lot of different data sources. Google surfaces things like search trends, and we can get access to things like keyword insights through a number of providers. We have proprietary data inside of, I'm speaking right now as HubSpotter. We have proprietary tracking data that we're collecting. When you install like that HubSpot tracking code on your app, you can see the analytics for how users interact with your content. So even if these other companies don't share the data that's inherent to what they collect, there's still a huge body of data that can be aggregated and that can be synthesized. And we can start to say, hey, what if you did this? And that's the direction that I think SaaS companies will start to go with using AI and macro data analysis.
That would be so incredible, Blake. Can you imagine you have on one screen and you know exactly everything about predicting what you need to do for your business, understanding that just in a snapshot, all areas, your sales, the logistics, everything's just on one page and you know exactly what you need to do from that data, from that snapshot.
Yeah, and I think about it a lot as a content
Yeah.
marketer. My background
Yeah.
is as a
Yeah.
writer, as a word nerd, and
Yeah.
I've always used tools like SEMrush and Ahrefs, and I think about the way that they've historically recommended topics and recommended keywords to write about. And there's this sort of semantic relationship between keywords and phrases that get used. And early on in my digital writing career, I would get so frustrated with those tools because they lacked so much nuance. I could understand how they arrived at the conclusions they arrived at and why certain keywords would be grouped together and recommended in the way that they were grouped together. But as a human, I knew why those pairings didn't make sense and why certain phrases and certain questions would be completely irrelevant to my audience. As an example, I got started freelancing back many years ago, primarily writing in the men's health and fitness industry. And so if I was writing a piece of content about prostate health, for example, or prostate exams, it wouldn't be long looking through some of the keyword research or the people also asked questions that would get surfaced in those tools that one of those SEO tools would start to recommend, let's say, adult topics. And you could see the logic for how it eventually jumped there, right? But again, as a human, I know why that's completely irrelevant and why that is not at all helpful for the type of content that I'm creating. Whereas I think a smarter form of data analysis, audience analysis, would be able to aggregate, cut out the noise, and be able to look at not only what's relevant to your audience, but also what you as an entity are positioned to be an authority on and provide value on, and then use that as the lens to surface those recommendations.
Yeah, wonderful. So, are there any challenges that you could share when it comes to SaaS companies integrating AI into their products?
Yeah, I'll refrain from getting too deep in the weeds.
Yeah. Yes.
Because there's a lot that goes on, especially inside of large companies. But I think that one of the primary challenges that is inherent to integrating AI into SaaS, especially thinking through generative AI and working with LLMs, is a lot of LLMs have a bit of a bias toward English as their primary language. A lot of the text that they've been trained on is in English. And a lot culturally of what they've been trained on is biased toward Western Europe and the US. And so even as the models have matured and expanded into additional languages, it's really difficult to get a great fit with those models across multiple regions and languages. And sometimes even if the translation is correct, the way that things are said is incorrect. And as an example of that, I can share, I was speaking with one of my customers from Finland recently. And Finland has a soft spot in my heart. I studied abroad in Finland. I love my time in Finland. And within Finnish, Finns tend to communicate a very direct manner and don't use a ton, especially in the business sector, of like superfluous, colorful, flowery language. Right?
To the point?
Yes, very direct to the point. But a lot of LLMs, especially from companies that are based in the US, love their exclamation points, love their adjectives, right?
Yeah.
And that's just not how Finns communicate in the business world. And that's
Mm.
true for Finland. It's true for a lot of East Asian countries and Southeast Asian countries. It's true for a lot of countries in the Middle East. The translations in Finnish was using the correct Finnish words, but this customer was saying that she had to spend quite a bit of time going through and rewriting things to just be more direct. So there's that challenge of saying, how do we work with AI in a way to make sure that all customers, regardless of where they live, are able to leverage these tools equally, and that we are constantly cognizant of the biases that are inherent to AI. AI is not objective as much as it likes to position itself as objective and take on the tone of objectivity. AI is not objective. And those biases do influence the content it creates, the way it functions. And it's something that within the SaaS industry, we have to constantly be aware of and considering.
And how about when it comes to data privacy security? How do SaaS companies address AI-driven data and analytics to ensure there's compliance and regulations?
Yeah. So on that front, I would say if you're an entrepreneur or a business looking to work with an AI tool, check and see what their legal policy is or what their privacy policy is.
Good point.
Because most AI tools on the market are not using proprietary AI models. Most are using a model like OpenAI or Claude or another provider that's out there, and then they are manipulating it in some way to provide that service with you. Now, a lot of companies will have enterprise agreements with those providers that essentially say, any data that our customers use when interacting with our tools that gets sent to your AI cannot be used to train your models. And that is a legally binding agreement that would say, for example, if you were using a HubSpot AI tool and OpenAI interacted with any of the prompting that you use, OpenAI cannot use that content to train their models and integrate anything that you used into their larger body of output, right? Not every company has that same level of agreement. Some of the especially cheaper and consumer AI tools will allow Claude and OpenAI to train their models on the content that you provide. So if you are, let's say you upload a press release that has future looking announcements to it, to one of these tools, and you're saying like, hey, rewrite this press release or update this press release, blah, 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 blah. And you want that information to be secret. If that model is being trained, then there is a possibility that a string of text that says this company at this date is announcing this product can be spat out somewhere else on the other end of that model. So when it comes to data privacy, always talk to the company, look at their documentation, make sure that they have that agreement that states that these providers cannot be trained on your data. And also, as a general precaution, like even if they have that, don't put anything super sensitive. Don't put your social security number into an AI tool. Just as a good habit.
Just don't.
Just don't.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, even with ChatGPT, I believe they do have a disclaimer that makes sure you're aware that this is public domain, not to enter anything personal.
Yep.
They have that disclaimer, and I'm sure that's making people more aware. It just seems like such a tool that can do so much. You may just think off the top of your head, you just might think that, you know what, I'm safe here. I'm just going to share it all. I'm going to share all my business projections and secrets. Let me just see what AI can help me with. But then it could be open to everyone. It could be other platforms in the future that may come and dissect that kind of information from this data because it is open, right?
Yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind is like the legal landscape around AI and their training data, that is, let's say, an evolving conversation. And the discussion around intellectual property and who owns what and what text are these models trained on or not, that I suspect is going to continue to come up in legal cases over the next several years. And that, I think, makes me particularly skeptical and nervous about some of these tools that are popping up around things like AI coaches and therapists, where it's, hey, pay $4 a month to get access to this AI coach or therapist, and people are divulging like sensitive personal information. Because if that's being incorporated into a training model and that transcript has to be released to the public as part of a court case, keep in mind that you're personally identifying information, and anything related to your private health matters could be public record.
So that's a great point, Blake. Great point. No, appreciate that. That's another awareness right there. You know what I mean? And then you come up with these brilliant ideas as an entrepreneur. You say, well, I'm going to create a coaching program using ChatGPT. I'm just going to use ChatGPT's open source and create this. But there's so much depth to that idea that you need to be very careful about, that it could be something devastating for people involved. So
even for something seemingly simple, enterprise agreements, contracts, have a lawyer review it.
No, great. Blake, appreciate you, man, today for giving your time to us, sharing your knowledge. Definitely keep in touch. If there's anything else exciting that you may be doing in the future, get in touch with us. I'd love to have you back. I enjoyed our conversation and wishing you all the best.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it too.